Good evening, everyone. It is my immense pleasure to welcome you all to this special public lecture. In particular, I would like to welcome His Excellency, the Assistant Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Professor Franceschi. Please, round of applause. I would also like to welcome all the parents, staff, friends of Whitesands School, everybody else here, all the guests to this event. We apologize. You know, the Nigerian factor, Nigerian time is always there. So, well, here we are. This event is being organized as part of activities to mark our 25th anniversary. And as you can see, a public lecture on family. Because from day one, we have always valued the contribution of the family to the education. In fact, we always say, as you know very well, parents are the first of their children. This is what we not only speak about, but actually this is the way we do things in such a way that we reflect the importance of parental involvement in education. And the talk is on parental involvement in children's education precisely, a pathway to national renewal. So it's logical that this should be a topic for such a school as Whitesands School, which the parents' contribution to education. So I think we're in for evening, and I would like to delay you further. I want to now welcome once again Professor Franceschi, who I know let you know, he arrived here, went to pick him up from the airport. He arrived at about 5 a.m. or before 5:50 a.m. So very early in the morning. He hadn't actually slept very well. Speech can be sure it is sleep deprived. I will deliver because you know it's very speak before. So without further ado, let me allow you.
Gentlemen, yes, I came at 5 in the morning and I may be a bit sleepy. So let's try to make this exciting, engaging, and I will not put you to sleep as I am sleeping. But as the MC said, I'm French by descent, Venezuelan by birth, and Kenyan by choice. And I live in London. So I'm confused. I'm perhaps Nigerian at heart, because every African has at least 1/5 or 1/4 and a half Nigerian. And I will begin with a little anecdote that happened exactly 3 weeks ago, before I go into the presentation. I had 40-minute audience with Prof. Leo, and we say many things, and the word peace and reconciliation and Nigeria. One of the things I told Prof. Leo is that I think we have something in common. And he asked me, what is it? And I said, well, when you were elected Pope, in your first address, you spoke Italian as Bishop of Rome and Spanish as Bishop of Peru. Because maybe you did not want people to say, here comes this American to tell us how to do things. And something like that happens to me, because I lived most of my life, 30 years in Kenya, But I was born in Venezuela, and my grandparents were French. So in the UK, people tell me, so you are Venezuelan? I say, no, I'm Kenyan. And it annoys me when they insist that I may be Venezuelan. I say, well, I love Venezuela, but I'm Kenyan. And he laughed and he said, well, we are where God has put us in the place where he has placed us. And I was very happy because it was very reassuring that the Pope understood me. And well, what I will do today is very simple. I will tell you a few stories, anecdotes. If the sound is too high or too low, please let me know, because I think you can hear me better than we can hear ourselves. Should I speak further from here? Excellent. I just use this one. This one sounds nicer. So, parenting. And you are parents in a school which is unique because it's one of the few schools in the world that give more importance to parents than to children. It sounds absurd, but it has a meaning because being a father or a mother is the most important job you have. And I will explain this with a few examples. If we look at Dick Fall, CEO of Lehman Brothers, he had a compensation in 1 year of $220 million. He's a billionaire in dollar terms. He brought Lehman Brothers down to collapse. It went into bankruptcy, and it has been the biggest bankruptcy in the history of mankind. Many people lost their livelihoods because of the wrong decisions made by this man who is facing time in jail. If we look at Ken Lay, the CEO of Enron, he lied, he cheated. He had billions of dollars in the bank. He was caught, he was convicted, and he died of a heart attack before serving his time in jail. He couldn't handle the pressure. Bernard Evers died in jail. Incredibly successful CEO, he put up WorldCom, that was a Ponzi scheme, and with all these millions, he died serving the 27 years he was given in jail. And if we look at one example that is close at home, Abdulmalik Jan Mohammed. He was the CEO of Imperial Bank in Kenya. He stole 38 billion Kenyan shillings. It's like half a billion that he siphoned, nobody knows where. And he died of a heart attack, and the bank imploded. And you say, well, why do we do this? What is it that drives us, as even family people, to do silly things, to put all this money in the bank, for perhaps our children to fight for this money, which was not theirs, and to pass on unhappiness to them? What's the reason for us to have that eagerness to increase our bank accounts for what, when sometimes it actually brings down what we love most, that is our own children? Well, this is a question we have to constantly ask ourselves. Bertrand Russell used to be, you see, without want is an part of happiness. And it's very true with everything. When are you happy? When you are looking for something. Of course, to be with everything you want makes you miserable. Even with ice cream. Perhaps we love ice cream, or you love whatever it is. I mean, jollof rice. And you can have 3 kilograms of jollof rice, but then you get sick. Okay, it's not healthy. So even those things that we love will make us, in excess, will make us unhappy. There are three things that I want to emphasize here, which are very important lessons. One is character, because the ability you hire. And in character, Alexander Harvard, courage, the boring part of the talk, courage, self-control, and justice are the key virtues you are constantly trying to exercise, even in make the right decision. Courage to stay the course and resist pressure. Self-control to subdue passions, to speak. Justice to give every individual their due. And apart from these four key virtues, prudence, courage, self-control, and justice, Harvard speaks of magnanimity and humility, which are the virtues that make you a leader. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in jail, he comes out of jail and he says, hey, we have to forgive, because if we don't forgive, we are prisoners of our hatred. And you say, well, if I come out of jail, I will go after 27 years in South Africa, I will go and buy an AK-47 and try to kill any white man around who may be related to the one who put me in jail. But Nelson Mandela thought differently, and he said, we have to forgive, because that makes us free. That's magnanimity. Humility, the humility of a man like Julius Nyerere, President of Tanzania. Julius Nyerere was a man who retired when the time for retiring came, and he had no money. He retired as a poor president, when presidents in Africa were not retiring and were not poor. Well, Julius Nyerere gave that incredible example of serving the country. But it's not enough to be good. You have to be good at what you do, including parenting. And competence is something that sometimes we forget is necessary. You say, well, I am poor because I'm honest. No, it's not true. You are poor because perhaps you are not clever enough, you are not competent enough, and you are not the best in your field. This man in this picture is Nicolás Maduro. Maduro was captured by the American forces directed by Trump from Venezuela, being the president of the country, and taken to jail. 95% of Venezuelans are celebrating, are happy, very happy that Maduro was taken away, because he was a crook and he was in very dirty deals. All the money of the country had been stolen, and the country with the biggest oil reserves in the world and the second largest gold reserves would see no benefit. Well, that's incompetence. And people ask sometimes me, hey, and was that an international lawful act? People in Venezuela don't ask themselves those questions. They say this guy stole elections, stole money, stole oil, sold the country to Russia, to China, and Cuba. It's good that he's out, because those are the consequences of incompetence. But it's very, very sad how what should have been done by the United Nations had to be done by one country, one man who is very questionable in his ways of doing things. And then we come to the very interesting part, this family character, fantastic. You have to be a virtuous person. Competence, you have to be good at what you do. You have to be good in yourself, good at what you do. But then the relationships. Who are the people around you? And who are you there for? And this is where we come to the very interesting part. These two people on these pictures have a very interesting story, because they met when they were in their 20s and they got married, and then let's see if we pass. Exactly, they got married. So some years ago already. The color was added later. The first child came this continued the course. The rest of the family came, and the one who is missing on that picture is me, because I am in the arms of my mother as a newborn, because I was number 8 out of 8 children then. And then you say, well, what happened with this family? And I will tell you this story because it's a story that you can relate to. And our successes are not our successes, are the successes of the people who formed us. And that's why I can give a story with my parents and say how we, the children, are the product of their sacrifice. So my father became the boss of the army, and my mother was the CEO of a bank. We are 8 children, then they adopted 2 more later when we all grew up. So we are 10. And the children are very close to each other. As you can see, in some cases it's less than a year difference. And my mother resigned twice. And she was told, no, you are not going anywhere. Keep on having your children, we don't care, but you are not leaving this place. Because, well, they wanted her to work there. It was a bank that was very prestigious. And then what happened is 50 years later, when they are celebrating the 50th anniversary, well, these are the children, now all grown up, that lady, and the daughter, the little daughter of one of them. So, of this family, what happened in all this time, from those years when they got married as a young man, woman in their 20s, to this time? Well, of these, the 8 children, 7 reached the PhD level. And the one who didn't, she was the Assistant Minister of Finance. And of those 7 that reached the PhD level, 3 are priests. They are there, you can see there, the 3 who had said that Mass in the anniversary of the wedding. One is in Rome, is a judge in the Vatican. The other 2 are in parishes, schools like Whitesands and the like. The eldest is a scientist in Geneva who was nominated for a Nobel Prize because he deciphered the structure of the ribosome, where the proteins are synthesized, and he's now designing the new generation antibiotics. And the 2 who are adopted, he's a doctor, she's a lawyer. And it's an amazing story. I mean, the thickest in the family is me. Okay, I'm the failure of the family in many ways. And you say, how in heaven this man and this woman who are inexperienced father and mother did this? How did this happen? And this is them nowadays, well, a few years ago, now enjoying somehow their retirement with the happiness that their joy, their source of happiness is their children. It's not the bank account, which doesn't exist, because they did something very interesting. My grandparents, who were very, very much involved in the chocolate business and the wine, the cocoa industry, etc., they decided we are not leaving any money to our children. And they gave everything to charities, to different things. And there was never a fight in the family. I said later on I was panicking because my parents were thinking of doing the same. And they did. They did not leave any money to us. They gave us the best education and 0 money. I mean 0. And we all had to survive on our own. You got the best education, go and make your own money. Why are parents nowadays trying to fill up their fat bank accounts to pass them on to children who are going to be a failure? because they will be living in a standard of life they did not work for. Or if they are not a failure, because maybe they got some example, the grandchildren will be a failure. I mean, it's absurd. And the best decision my grandfather made was not to leave money to his children. And the best decision my father made was not to leave money to us. We attend in a WhatsApp group. We have incredible jokes going up and down all the time. We are in different parts of the world. There is not even a single fight. And we know that the day those wills are open, the testament, there will be nothing. I mean, there's nothing to fight for. Why are we going to fight if there's no money left behind? Was that a miracle? Well, in a way, we are living miracles constantly, and we take them for granted. How was this miracle worked in this case of this Franceschi family? Was in four things that I have put together there in pictures. One is time. Time, why? Because we did not have free time at home. They always kept us busy. You know, it's very interesting, but my father was the chief of general staff, the boss of the army, I mean an important general. My mother in the banking. Well, every weekend they organized an outing for the family. We were always going every weekend to visit the grandmother, the aunties, going up and down, traveling together as a family in the country. They could not afford to take us out of the country. I took my first plane when I was 18. We never traveled anywhere outside the country because it was too expensive. I mean, when you have to buy 10 tickets, if we were 8 plus the 2 of them, and then later on 12, it's impossible. You go into bankruptcy. Well, they knew that the more children, the less traveling. But they were making a long-term investment because now, when they are sick, there are many people to take care of them. So, well, anyway, this is the way it worked out. But we did not have free time at home. And this is something that you have to think about your children. How much free time do they have? I remember being at home, watching TV, doing nothing. Maybe nowadays would be on the mobile, and my dad would come and say, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm here." No, come on, let's clean this wall. I remember we cleaned so many walls at home. I mean, home was sparkling clean. We were always cleaning something, moving furniture. I used to think, why don't they put wheels on this furniture? Because we are always moving furniture, rearranging things. But they were making us be busy. We had to be doing something, and something for others, not for ourselves. So there was no free time. Second, money. There was no money. I became a professional beggar in school, almost. I joke saying that because they gave us very little money. It was sufficient for us to have either the sandwich or the Coke, but not both. And you had to do trading, barter trading. Okay, you give me half of your sandwich, I give you half of the Coke. I remember at home, there was never a soda for each child. It was always a soda for 2. And I never understood why, but come on, I mean, why don't you buy, it's not so expensive, why don't you buy a few more, no? It's 1 soda for 2. So one poured and the other one chose. So you measure up to the millimeter. Even the meniscus had to be perfect. The glasses had to be the same type. And there was no ice cubes because that can modify the amount. It was one had to pour, the other one chose. Why? Because there was no money. And we knew we could not have just suddenly tantrums. I go to the supermarket and I start crying because I want this chocolate and my mother is not buying it for me. They will leave you in the supermarket. Some neighbor will bring you later. When you stop crying, you get tired of crying. But nowadays, we panic. Oh my God, the child is crying. Do something. What is people going to say? Someone will film the son, the daughter crying. Oh my God. Nothing. You can cry until your tears have dried out. And then you come home like an idiot, thinking that you have wasted your time crying, and still you don't have the chocolate that you wanted to have. And that was an amazing lesson. So if you give your children excess of money, you are giving them actually a knife or a gun for them to shoot themselves. And I saw this as a dean of the law school in Nairobi. I saw this so many times because we used to take the students. There was a plan we put in place where every student in second year of law would go to Europe to see the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court and see and speak to the judges. It's something we manage a miracle because we put $300 aside every year from the fees, and in 4 years they had paid for the trip, even those who were on scholarship were going, so for every student. And I would tell the parents, everything is paid for. How much do I give my son or my daughter? 30 euros for an emergency taxi if they are left behind. But there was no need to get more. And there is someone here in this room who was in that law school and who went for that trip and saw how it happened. But some parents will give the children 1,000 euros. Oh, my daughter, in case of an emergency, here is 1,000. Disaster. Those 1,000 euros went into alcohol, parties, and sometimes drugs, because some children are insensible or parents have not had time to educate them, and they go to The Hague and they find a coffee shop. Coffee shops are drug shops and they are legal in The Hague, and then people start trying nonsense. So, money. The third thing, responsibility. We were free, but we were responsible for our actions. You were accountable. So there was nothing like, oh, there is no freedom, you can't go to a party, you can't go, but you have to account for your actions. And you have to pay for your own actions. So I remember saving money because I wanted to buy a Nintendo, a PlayStation, and I was saving money for a whole year until we managed to save enough money, and we went with my sister and bought a PlayStation, and we spent the whole night playing video games until we got so bored and we had to sleep. And 2 weeks later, that PlayStation was gathering dust, because that happens to children. You see, they get excited with something and very soon you drop it. But it's very interesting that they were constantly observing us and trying to see how we behave and were accountable for our actions. And if you did something wrong, you had to clean it. Nobody was going to be there to clean it for you. And then piety. Very interesting. We saw our parents pray quietly on their own. There was no obliged prayers at home. I think one of the worst ideas is when parents say, now we must pray the rosary and the 3 rosaries because you have to be pious. And of course the children end up hating the rosary. Or you must do, I don't know, you must speak in tongues now because the Holy Spirit has to come down on you, otherwise you are not my child. Very bad idea. What my mother would do is good example, and my father. And then, if you are choice, I remember she would come to ask me sometimes during holidays, during the week, Louis, do you want to go for Mass tomorrow with me? Not a Sunday. Sunday was not negotiable. And if I said no, fine, no problem. I will not wake you up. If I said yes, she would come to wake me up at 6 in the morning. At 6 in the morning, you are 12, 13 years old, you change the story. I say, well, now I'm too tired, I don't want to go. No, no. Yesterday, I asked you. You said yes. Now, you get up. You have to be a man of your word. If you had said no, I would not come to wake you up. And that remained in my mind. I had to be a man of my word. And if they invited me to pray, if I said no, fantastic. But if I said yes, I have to commit. That sense of responsibility and piety was a very important of our lives. Then, and these miracles happen in very ordinary ways in the life of everyone here. I have put this tree here now to just explain to you one very interesting thing that happened in 2023 on 25th of May 2023, almost 3 years ago now. This tree is in the middle of Freetown. It's called the cotton tree, was called the cotton tree, was the emblematic tree of Freetown where the slaves who fought on the side of the British Empire in the Independence War of America were liberated and settled in Freetown. That's why it's called Freetown. The ones who fought on the side of the Americans ended up in Liberia, and the ones on the side of the French in Libreville. So Libreville, Freetown, Liberia means the same thing. This tree was still there. And in 2023, there was elections in Sierra Leone. The country was deeply polarized, very polarized. And we were trying to negotiate a peace deal between the government and the opposition. It was a very difficult situation. We arrived there with the Secretary General. We already had a team on the ground on the 24th of May. That night, it rained cats and dogs and elephants and giraffes on Freetown. And a lightning hit the cotton tree. And that night, before the signing of the peace deal, the cotton tree shattered. It was 500 years old. I mean, this was the tree where a slave had come and free slave had come and prayed in 1796. It was now 500 years old, and on that night, a lightning hit it and it shattered. As you know, because it also happened in Kenya, in Central Province, for example, when an emblematic tree collapses, someone is going to die. It's a bad omen. Well, in this case, this tree was a bad omen for the country. I had said to the protocol team and the security team and the police that I wanted to go for mass in the morning of the 25th. And they took me at 6 in the morning to mass. And one person in the team said, I want to go as well. Then we went for mass. At mass, the priest in the homily said, last night a lightning hit the cotton tree and it shattered, and I passed by there, and here is the branch to prove to you that the cotton tree has collapsed. It's a very bad thing for the country. You have to pray. We may have war. After mass, I asked for the branch, and I rushed to the hotel, and I told the Secretary General, this has happened. Let's change the speech. And we sat down, and she changed the speech and wrote a very beautiful, inspiring speech, flipping the coin from being a curse to being a blessing. The new tree, the new Sierra Leone, the new country, forgetting the old hatred, the old divisions. Let's build this together. Let's plant the new tree of life. And she did it. We went to the auditorium, 600 people there. The president came, the opposition leader came. They had never shook hands in 10 years. She began the speech, and when she produced the branch and said, last night this happened, people went crazy, hysteric. I saw ministers crying because they couldn't believe it was too symbolic for them. And the president jumped on stage, the opposition leader jumped on stage, and she put them together, their hands, with the branch in the middle, and they embraced each other. Policemen told us we had already bought guns, distributed guns, and when we saw this, we said, why are we going to fight if these men love each other, if they are friends? In the afternoon, the ambassadors of the US, UK, Italy, France, European Union, Egypt, etc., call us to the United Nations. Please come to the United Nations, and we want to see you. And they sat on one side of the table, and we were four, we sat on the other side. And they said, how did this happen? We live here, we know this place, we know these men, we know they hate each other. How did you make this happen? This was not supposed to happen. We were embarrassed on your behalf because we knew this was not going to work. And the Secretary General told them, you know how did this happen? I was embarrassed when she said this story, but she said, this happened because this morning Louis and Michelle were at Mass, and that is where the priest gave them the branch. And Abiola, who is the head of Africa, and is from Nigeria, she's a Muslim, very devout Muslim. She was on her knees facing Mecca praying. Things happen in the Commonwealth because we pray. And she gave them a talk, a lecture on prayer. And I couldn't believe it. This is the first woman Attorney General of the United Kingdom, a baroness in the House of Lords, the first black woman to have been member of the cabinet in the UK, the first black woman to have been Queen's Counsel, and she's telling them a lesson on prayer. They couldn't believe their ears, but it was a beautiful moment. And I said, well, these are the miracles that sometimes happen and we don't realize. And this one is another miracle. I'm telling you these two because I told Pope Leo about this in our meeting. Among other things, we were speaking about across the Commonwealth. This happened last week in Fiji. These two, the man and the woman, are prisoners. She's in jail for theft, and she has been 6 years in jail. She pleaded guilty, and she repaid the money, but she had to fulfill her time in jail. And he is in jail for murder, and she is on life sentence. He will be there for life, and he has been in jail for 17 years. Well, we had the meeting of law ministers, all the law ministers, justice ministers, and attorney generals from all the Commonwealth countries in Fiji. On the last day, we went to jail, to prison with the ministers, and on every table, they had lunch with the prisoners, we had lunch with the prisoners, and on every table, there were 2 prisoners or 3, 2 ministers, a prison guard, and a judge. And they were discussing freely, each of them, what is justice, what does justice mean to you? And all the ministers and the judges said, my God, what an experience. I have seen the human face of my decisions. Sometimes we lawyers and judges, we are very quick to send people to jail, but we do not realize the human face those prisoners have and what they suffer and go through. And we had gone there with a prisoner from Kenya who was a prisoner for 13 years, had been sentenced to death, and he was too poor to have a lawyer. And through a program we have, he learned law in prison through the University of London. He got his law degree. He was admitted as an advocate in Kenya. He represented himself on appeal, and he won the case. And he came out of jail, and he's a free man. And he was in Fiji telling these prisoners, this is not the end of life. Prison, and he said, I thank God for prison because it made me a lawyer and he taught me to forgive. and I forgave the policeman who fixed me and put me in jail. So prison is not the end of the road, and there is always a second chance in life. What a beautiful story. And I said, well, these are the stories that are constantly happening in many of our lives, and we don't realize. We have to have a sense of legacy and destiny. We are not here by chance. And of course, in this sense, faith plays a key role. What's my relationship with God? And how much importance do I give to this third dimension? How much of it do I pass on with example to the children? Because otherwise, we are leaving them half-handed, handicapped in a way. Well, I had this nice meeting. We spoke about all these issues with the Holy Father, apart from many other things and concerns. The issue of the Sierra Leonean story was very, very appealing to him. He was really happy. And I also told him about this fantastic story you have here in Nigeria. And this is in Sokoto. James Wuye, who is a Protestant bishop, and an imam, Ashif, Mohammed Ashif, who is, they have a very interesting story. And I will summarize it very quickly. These two men won the Commonwealth Peace Prize last year. They came to my office, and the Protestant bishop, Wuye, has a wooden hand. That's why he is giving this hand, but the other one is down because it's not there. It's a wooden hand. And he told me, this hand was cut by this guy, by the Muslim imam. And the imam told me, my brother and my cousin were killed by this guy. He wanted to kill me, and on mistaken identity, he killed my brother and my cousin. And we were put together by the government, the societies, the two communities, to somehow negotiate peace. We ended up sleeping in the same place, in the same room or hostel. The bishop spent the whole night thinking, this is 30 years ago, thinking, how will I poison this guy? And the imam was thinking, how will I suffocate this guy? They didn't, because they knew they would be caught. And then they started talking over the weeks, and they ended up thinking in themselves a deep interior conversion. The Muslim thought, I cannot be the follower of the religion of peace if I want to commit violence against this guy. And the bishop thought, or pastor then, I cannot call myself a follower of Christ if I cannot forgive this guy. So they started talking, and they decided to start working together for peace and reconciliation. And they have been doing this through a beautiful foundation for 30 years, and they have done a fantastic work across Africa and even Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. Well, it's an incredible miracle. And when I told the Holy Father this story, he was so excited. And then later I wrote to Reverend Wuye and to the Imam, and I told them, by the way, I sent them the pictures. And I said, I told you a story to the Holy Father. He was so excited. They were over the moon. And you say, well, we all are witnesses of these little or big miracles that happen around us. But sometimes we forget, and we don't have that sense of direction and balance, which is given. And now we come to the end by, this thing has to be, I have to have a proper sense of direction when I want to change. So, it's given by the, I think we need bigger help here. The battery is low. But it's given by character, the formation of virtues. Character, competence, we have to be good, and we have to be good at what we do, and family. those relationships and those people that God has put around us, all bound together, but a deep commitment to one's faith. And we cannot guarantee success, but we guarantee failure by giving up. Therefore, giving up is not an option. We may say it's too late, my children are too old, I am sitting here as the grandfather of the kids who are studying in the school. It is never too late for a new ending. We cannot call it beginning, but at least let's make the ending good. Thank you very much for your attention. Family businesses, and how do you balance this need of, well, let's be clear, and this is tied also to the second question of the issue of money and the country and wealth in the country and going ahead and developing the country. The first important step to help poverty is to come out of it. You cannot help poverty if you are in poverty. So you have to do well. And you can do good by doing well, or you can by doing good you do well, and vice versa. But one thing is the money you are making, which we all want to make, the goods you are buying, the house you have, let's say, I mean, it's very important, and I'm not advocating here for a kind of Franciscan approach to family life, because it's not correct. I mean, it may be a vocation of a person, but it's not the vocation of a family. So certainly, make money, make the most you can make, be very successful financially, have a nice holiday home if you can afford it, and but is how do you now teach yourself to begin with and your children to make use and value the things they have. I think we in the family valued everything we had because everything seemed to be difficult to get. So nothing was easy. We never went into a shop and say, give me everything, like Michael Jackson did in several occasions, where he entered some shops and say, I want everything here. That was not an option. So family businesses have to be successful as businesses. But I have known many rich people who live personally a very simple life. And you have examples like some of the big billionaires. Warren Buffett, for example, he says, well, he travels simple, he lives a simple life, he doesn't use much money on himself, on his own things, and this is perhaps a classical example, but there are very many people who are very wealthy and do not splash that wealth in the face of everyone, much less in a country where there are so many people in need. If I'm in Switzerland and I see a Ferrari passing, I don't get impressed because there are so many Ferraris and so many wealthy people in Switzerland. They should think more of outside Switzerland and help other countries. But of course, if you are in Lagos and you see a Ferrari passing, you say, wow, this guy would have bought a nice car. But you see, you could have used perhaps 60% of that expense in something else and creating jobs, and perhaps building a little factory and employing some people and making some families come out. So that's the social conscience that I think we have to instill. So family businesses have to be successful, and money is a fantastic thing because it makes us do a lot of good. But again, the problem is what we do with it and which value we give to it. It's a means, it's not an end. And that's what we have to understand from the moment we are just little children. Money is a means to something, it's not an end in itself. Then being busy. It's very true. I think every generation has to deal with different challenges. And it's very true that nowadays both mother and father are working. Perhaps that was the case also in my family. Maybe it was not the case in many other families where only the father or the mother was working. But there is something we have done away with which really helped us. A person who was always unnoticed and did not appear in the photos, in the pictures I was showing you, was my grandmother. She lived with us and she has a huge part of the success or the bearing of what we are today. It's unbelievable the advantage of the extended family. I used to say, my God, I have been taking care of old people as a child. And it is true because they were old people. I mean, my grandmother died when she was 103 years old. She was very old. We took care of her always, but she had taken care of us as little children. And that's why my mom could work. It's also true that we also had people helping at home. Maybe in Nigeria that's still possible, in Kenya as well. In Europe it's not a possibility anymore. You cannot have a house person, boy, girl, or somebody working for you at home. It's very expensive. In the US you have to do everything yourself, cut your own grass, repair your own pipes, and everything. So it is true, things change, and that's possible. Parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, always you are reaching where you can. But I always saw an incredible sense of generosity. You see, they gave up so much for us, but that paid back later. And it's still, which is something that I thank God for. I mean, even in those days, and then later on 10 because they adopted 2 from a very poor family whose parents died, and my sisters knew the sisters, and they were 5-year-old twins, a boy and a girl, and they adopted them, and there are like 2 more in the family. Well, I know that my parents gave up a lot in their comfort. It's very interesting. I thought my mother never got sick. She was always up early in the morning. My father never woke up after us. And on weekends, there was always a plan. And it's now on realizing, took me many years to realize the incredible sacrifice that entailed. Because we took it for granted, but no, they felt tired, they felt sick, they did not want to get out of home. I mean, if there is something you like, it's a weekend where nobody gets you out of home and you have time for yourself. Well, those are things that you have to measure. Times change and realities change, but the spirit, I think, has to be the same. The idea of generosity and giving yourself. And then, final question, very interesting. It's true, children are a lot more exposed now. I say that for our grandparents, perhaps the generation was virtuous. This is what is good, this is what you do, period. For us, it was actual. All is bad, this is what you do, and I do it because I want, and it's genuine, and it's modern, and that's it. For the children nowadays, it's virtual. Is now the future. This is my virtual world where I am. And many of them have a personality in Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok, or whatever it is, that is different from the real personality. They live in their own world and they are connected. But well, I think while in the past we told a child, this is not done, and maybe you gave what in Kenya we call an ngoto, that you how do you call it here? It has a for sure the local name. Well, Nowadays, it's different. You have to give reasons because they are so exposed. I mean, keep in mind also, it's good to think when you give a child a mobile phone, you are giving a child fantastic something he or she can use for connecting, for calling, for telling you things and telling mom, dad, I'm here in school, please come to pick me up, or the thief has come, please come to rescue me. But also you are giving the child, thank you, a lot of pornography, of sex abusers, of predators. I mean, it's incredible. So that's a huge responsibility. So before you give a child a phone, well, think very well. And also, I would say, like we did in the past with our, let's say, PlayStation, that I had to save money for a year to buy a PlayStation that today would be for free because it's now so old. Well, don't give them an iPhone 17 Air because it's my son and I love you, or my daughter. No, let them gain it. I mean, give them a Nokia 43.7. What was the number of Nokia 40? Those things that were like stones. You could kill somebody with a Nokia. So if you threw it at them. So yes, give them a very old phone. If they need a phone that doesn't have access to internet, which is not an intelligent phone, is not something that, and they will complain because all the other kids in the class have those phones, but tell them, well, earn it yourself and make them mature. Use these incredible advances of technology to help them mature. I hope I have answered what I can. You see, parents not on the same page. It's very true. And I think in many instances, what makes up for that not being on the same page is affection, love. It's very easy for a child to judge very quickly. That is bad, mom is good, mom is bad, that is bad, that is good. Or my father believed the wrong thing, my mother the right thing, or vice versa. This happens, and I think what is important is to teach, as I was taught, to love the defects of, for example, my dad or my mom. You see, at home, I know they had very sharp, different approaches. My mom used to say, joking, you have the power, I have the money. You are a general, I'm a banker. And they have different approaches, they have different understandings of punctuality. Interestingly, my mom was extra punctual, and my dad was not. And he was supposed to be the general in the army who was always punctual, but she was always ahead of time. And I remember her telling him, hey, we are going to be late, come. And then he said, well, I'm ready, but he was still in the room. So, well, we had these jokes at home because they were not on the same page in many aspects. But it did not become a bitter kind of fight. It did not become an aspect of criticism. And I think when we criticize someone else, we are trying to make ourselves better. Okay, this is not my fault, it's the fault of him or her, etc., etc. I tell you here something that I think I said in the past in a forum at the university. I remember being once with an expert in family matters called David Isaac. It was an auditorium with around 200 couples and very many other people. And he asked, when there is a fight or a big argument between husband and wife, who should say sorry? And we were giving different answers. For example, who should say sorry? If someone gives me ideas here, when there is a bad argument, who should say sorry? Who? Then, the strong of the two, no. Who? The father, no. Huh? Both, no. Whoever started the argument, no. Wrong. Both of them, no. The one who is at fault, who is not at fault, no. Wrong. You see, we gave every possible different possibility, and he said the one who is more intelligent, the most intelligent one should say sorry. And you realize, well, why? Because it's the person who is magnanimous, who sees beyond the fight. What is important is to keep the trust, the relationship. And then you say, well, but why should I be the one? Because you are the most intelligent one. You know what you want. And well, sometimes we are not intelligent enough to be able to have this approach in life. Phones, age, oh gosh, there are quite a number of studies on this. I have a friend in the UK who is currently designing an iPhone with Apple, which has no access to social media and to browsing. It's an iPhone like any iPhone, but has no access to social media and to browsing. And is specially designed for kids and for adults with problems of addiction to pornography. Very interesting. Say, but I cannot go into Instagram. You can't. And in X, you can't. And TikTok, you can't. You can send messages on WhatsApp, but and you cannot browse. But it's very interesting because you say, well, why should my phone become my office or my computer if it's giving me trouble? So when it comes to children, the principle my father used is when you can afford it, you have it. So you will have what you can afford. Can you afford a phone? Well, and then you buy it, but then you will be responsible. Can you afford an iPhone when you are 15, 16? You can't, unless you have worked very hard and you are lucky and you made $1,000 in one way or another, not stealing. So it's very interesting, and I think the principle is do not give anything just for free. And if it is for free, I mean, when it comes to this, certainly the food, we understand what I'm talking about. When I say anything, means things like luxuries for free. No, teach children to win whatever they have had access to. That is not an essential aspect of life, because you cannot charge them for food. Don't transform family life also into a kind of transactional approach of thing. No, today you are going to eat whatever, plain rice because you have not made money. No, I'm not speaking of that. Now, specifically with phones, there are very many studies showing the inconvenience of giving little children screens. And you see this a lot, for example, on planes, because this is what makes the child keep quiet, and then you can travel in peace. Okay, those are like war techniques, okay, for the child not to cause war, okay, but if you have to do this every day in life, there is a problem. And there is an addiction already that you have to deal with. So I would say common sense. Use the 4 principles we spoke about of time, piety, responsibility, and money. Also, when it comes to technologies, and I'm sure you will get it right. Common sense will prevail. It is true, it's a huge bargain because everything is inside a phone, but also there are very many opportunities. And that's why it's not enough to give a command, as we said before, but you have to explain the reasons. And family work balance is a huge challenge because we have always the temptation of working more to make more money, to have some more security in life, especially in countries where the government does not provide social security, then that pressure will always be there. So you have to know when to tell yourself enough. And very many times we may accept the extra work because we really want it. And it's true that in many countries in Africa, sadly, in Kenya, the same thing happens. Parents, fathers, do not know how to be at home. Because colonization was like that. It brought the fathers out of their homes into the city to work for the government, for whatever it was, and the families were left up country, in the countryside. So many men grew up without having a father figure at home. So now, after office, you go to the bar to drink a few beers, and then you come home at 12 midnight when everyone is asleep because nobody will bother you. So suddenly you can wake up one day and your children are already 25 years old. I say, when did this boy or girl grow up? Well, you are not at home, you are absent. So that idea of spending quality time at home is essential. And family policies. Well, you see, there is nothing specific on family policies because in the Commonwealth, each country has its own approach to policies. But what we have tried to do is that whatever model laws we pass, because in the Commonwealth we have common law that cuts across boundaries, those model laws somehow are embedded with principles that can make the person, the society, the family, the society, the country a bit better. So, but certainly, I think Africa has to teach Europe again how to have family and have proper working family relationships, because Europe has forgotten the story. So it's a huge responsibility for Africa and specifically for Nigeria. Yes, you see, sometimes let's say love is many times painful. Painful in the sense that it entails a sacrifice. And that sacrifice is a bitter pill to swallow. And often we are not good at explaining how or why or giving the reasons behind. And I think this is something that we in our generation have to change. We received instructions, as we were saying before, and we were told, you do this, period, don't ask any questions. Nowadays, questions are asked, and questions need answers. And I think it's very important for parents to explain to their children why they are making that decision, as painful as it may be. But also, it's important to give children the options. For example, it's not simply no mobile, go and hang yourself, or count the hair on your head, because it's not a choice. So it's very important to think very much of the, how would I put it? Let me explain it how I used to tell our teachers, the teachers in the lecturers in the law school, was every student had a laptop, and the laptops were used for class. And some lecturers, when they came into the classroom, they said, everybody closes the laptops. No, I don't want to see anybody looking at the laptops, because I'm going to teach and I want you to pay attention to me. And I used to tell the lecturers, you have to be careful, because this could be a sign of failure. You are so boring that the students disconnect from you and go into their phones or laptops, and you are trying to fight the wrong side of the battle. It's like when the Americans were fighting the war against drugs. You are fighting Colombia because they are producing the drugs, but wait, there is somebody who is consuming it. And if you fight Colombia, somebody else will produce it because there is still eagerness to consume. So it's not a matter of fighting. I used to tell these lecturers, the laptops, you have to be more entertaining than the social media or the laptops or internet. So you have to challenge yourself and change the way you teach, because you have to become more interesting than TikTok or Instagram that has a 3 second span of attention. So that's a huge challenge. And well, I think ask for reasons, ask for explanations, and challenge your parents also to give you explanations and to give you example. Because it's very easy for me to say, hey children, stop looking at your mobile. Stop, don't look at your mobile anymore. Hey mom, I'm busy. Hey, but you, mom, let's go. No, leave me alone. I'm busy. Stop looking to your mobile and go and do something, study. And then you are looking at your mobile, telling the child not to look at his mobile. So we have to also walk the talk. And that is partly what I always saw my parents doing. So I don't know if I have answered your question, but it's a difficult one. But it's true. And from today onwards, when they tell you no mobile, just realize that it is indeed an act of love, because this gadget can destroy your life or can build it. And it's their responsibility to teach you to use it to build, not to destroy.
Good evening, everyone.